Hello and welcome to the Met Office Weather Studio Live. It's Friday. We are here at the Met Office HQ in Exeter, ready and willing to talk to you about the hot weather that's coming up over the weekend. I'm Met Office meteorologist Aidan McGibbon.
And I'm Alex Deakin. Welcome along. Thank you for being there.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's lots more to talk about. This week, it seems like a repeating pattern each Friday. We talk about how high the temperatures could climb and the return to cooler weather. More of that on the menu this week, but it's a different kind of heat wave, which we'll go into. It's going to affect different locations to the last two heat waves.
No two heat waves are ever the same, just like no two summers are ever the same.
Or snowflakes.
Good point, good point. Yes, welcome along. Thank you for being there. Give us the thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button and do subscribe if you haven't done already. And welcome if you're watching this on Spotify. Did you know you can watch us on Spotify now?
I do now.
Yeah, there you go. So if you are watching us on Spotify, welcome to you as well, wherever you're watching. Thank you for being there, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching afterwards. Do keep your questions coming in, keep your comments coming in. We do love reading them and we do try and answer as many of them as possible. Sometimes we don't get round to answering them during the live. We'll go back to them we always do, just like we always do. There's a quiz. Is there a quiz?
There is.
There is a quiz.
Yeah, you've got to stay tuned for that. Quite a tricky one this week, I think.
Oh, don't tell me
I
that,
don't think
man.
you'll get 5 out of 5. We'll see.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see.
Some questions already in.
Yeah.
Mark Garrett's asked about high humidity levels and why we get such high humidity in the UK. A very pertinent question, of course, because I've seen a lot of talk online about how the heat in the UK feels different to other countries, and part of that, not all of that, but part of that is to do with the humidity. Of course, we're a group of islands surrounded by water, and so we're going to get more humid weather here compared with, say, continental Europe or the middle of the USA, for example. But also, those seas at the moment surrounding the UK are unusually warm. You're going to go into a bit more on that as well, aren't you? So that helps to increase the humidity. So,
yeah. It's the humidity is a big factor. And one of the interesting things about the heat waves we've had so far this summer is the fact that where the air's come from. A lot of the time, when we see hot spells in summer, we're talking about the air wafting up from the south. We've had three notable hot spells through the summer so far, and not one of them we've seen that. They've all either been imported air from the Atlantic or from further east or further north. And what we're seeing is the temperatures be increased by the pressure, squishing the air a little bit. But as Aidan says, because we're surrounded by water, if that air has been sourced from over the Atlantic rather than further south, it is going to be more humid. And another factor, of course, we're not geared up for these kind of temperatures. So when you live in the United States or the Middle East and you get much higher temperatures, but you've got air conditioning and our infrastructure just isn't built for it. Yeah,
when I got home last night, it was so hot in the house, I suggested we all sit in the car because that's the only thing that has air conditioning. I was half joking, of course.
What have you been up to this week? Speaking of cars, that's what reminded me. You saw something exciting this week, didn't you?
What, you drive past in your new car?
Me drive past in my new car. I've got a new electric car, so I was very excited.
Congratulations.
Thank
that makes
you.
two of us.
Yes, exactly. I joined your club.
With electric cars. Fun to drive, aren't they?
They are a lot of fun to drive. Yes. Sensibly within the speed limit, obviously, but they're very good. I've only been in it once, but very much looking forward to driving it more. Yeah,
I had a nice walk on Wednesday, the day off. Apart from that, being in the office talking about the rising temperatures and all of that stuff.
Yes, I was on the deep dive on Tuesday. Honor did the 10-day trend on Wednesday. So, lots to talk about as always. Back from Germany. I was in Germany last week. That was good fun as well. So, I've had a busy couple of weeks, to say the least. Right, any more questions coming in?
Nigel Clifford.
Yes.
Can you explain why the highest temperature recorded upgraded to 35.8 Celsius from the weather station at Faversham on the 1st of July? Instead of the actual day, it was reported later, and the reason behind that is that different weather stations across the UK are monitored in different ways. Some of them send immediate updates, so we can see almost in real time what the temperature is getting to on a particular day. But there are other stations where they are more climate stations. They are monitored less regularly. They have a human observer turn up and have a look at where the temperature reached to. So you can have max and minimum thermometers that can be looked at later. So rather than having to constantly keep your eye on it or have it send an electronic reading through, then these maximum thermometers, the mercury or whatever it is, alcohol, whatever they use, nudges a kind of marker up to the highest point, and then that's where it's left for the observer to read it the next morning.
Yeah, they're quite cool, maximum minimum thermometers. So yeah, they're not always, when we talk about the temperatures of the day, they're always provisional figures until they've been confirmed, until they've been ratified. And if particularly when we're talking about exceptional heat or temperatures are record breaking or the highest of the year, then we do need to monitor them. We just double check that everything's absolutely fine with them. So that was one of the things. This one came in the next day, and then again it had to be checked to make sure that that site was fine. And yeah, so that's why the current highest temperature of the year is 35.8 Celsius. Unlikely to be beaten in this current hot spell, but we could get 33 or 34 today and tomorrow.
Can the heat wave break any records? This current heat wave, good question. We're not expecting the highest temperature of the year so far for the UK, but certain regions of the UK will experience the highest temperature of the year. So that Faversham temperature that I just mentioned, that didn't break any records. It was recorded on the 1st of July. It was 35.8 Celsius. And we're unlikely to exceed that with this heat wave. But of course, that was in the southeast. This heat wave is different because the southeast will be cooler than the last two heat waves. But northern and western parts of the UK, so Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern and western England, Wales, all likely to see their highest temperatures of the year either today or, particularly for Scotland and Northern Ireland, tomorrow. And Northern Ireland's record temperature, I think, off the top of my head, is 31.3 Celsius. Temperature won't be far off that tomorrow.
It's a possible.
It's a possible.
I'd say
not likely, but it's a possible.
Maybe 30% chance, or maybe I'm overdoing it. But other records could go. Site records, the Murray coastline, temperatures there, all-time records for places like Kinloss are about 31 point something. Small chance that they could go as well, because we could easily get to 30, 31 tomorrow in the Northwest Highlands. The highest temperature in Stornoway, I think, is only 26 point something. Small chance that could go. The nighttime temperature, you've been speaking to our meteorologists in Aberdeen, and there's a potential for the nighttime record to go in Scotland.
Yeah, and the nighttime temperature record in Scotland is 20.9 Celsius, so just a smidge under 21. And there's the possibility that we get close to that somewhere around the west coast or the Northwest Highlands, and it could actually be higher parts of Scotland that see that temperature record go, because there's a little bit of an inversion where the temperature is much cooler at the very lowest layers of the atmosphere, and as a result, if you go a little bit further in the sky, you get above that inversion, you get the very warm air just sitting above that. So it's possible that some Achnagar, somewhere like that, Northwest Highlands, could just about break that. Tomorrow night's the night.
Yeah, it's not tonight, it's tomorrow night, isn't it? Yeah, so through the weekend we'll be keeping a close eye on that, because our meteorologists are here 24/7, 365 days a year. Quick question from last week. Steffi Adcock asks, have you spotted any Noctilucent clouds yet? Have you spotted any yet?
I haven't. I've not looked out for them, though.
No, me neither. This is the time of year, though. This is the prime time of year to be seeing Noctilucent clouds. I have seen quite a few people spotting them on social media. Noctilucent clouds are pretty rare. They seem to be becoming more common, more frequent. Maybe that's because more people are aware of them, or maybe other things going on in the atmosphere. But yeah, they're really rare because they're so high up, 200,000 feet, something like that, Noctilucent clouds, and it's when a little bit of moisture gets trapped that high in the sky. But you also need the sun to be at the right angle to reflect those very high skies. So you only really get them kind of in and around the solstice this time of year. In a couple of weeks' time, you're probably not going to get them. And they come out kind of late evening time, at the time of the brightest stars come out. So you can see them at this time of year if you've got clear skies. I'd say there's a reasonable chance, if the atmosphere is right for them, for this weekend. So yeah, if you're in the mood, stay up and see if you can spot any Noctilucent clouds. Checking on social media, see if other people are spotting them, is always a good way to go and look high up in the distance, and they might get a silvery wisp. That's what they kind of look like. Have you ever seen them?
I don't know, maybe.
I saw them once on the top of the BBC Weather Centre roof. We heard that there was some going, and me and my colleague went up there in the middle of the night and actually spotted them. That was the first time I'd ever spotted them. So yeah,
despite the light pollution.
Despite the light, yeah, I was in London, so that was pretty impressive.
Connor's asked, do red thunderstorm warnings exist? The answer is yes, it is possible to issue a red thunderstorm warning. All of the warnings, with the exception of extreme heat, go from yellow, amber to red, and they're assessed in terms of the impacts, but also the likelihood of those impacts occurring. Extreme heat doesn't have a yellow threshold, so that's just amber and red. But I would say it's very unlikely to have a red thunderstorm warning, because thunderstorms, for a red warning to be issued, you have to have maximum likelihood of maximum impacts. So highly likely that it will be highly disruptive. And the thing about thunderstorms is they are always so hit and miss that it's unlikely that you'd get to that confidence level, as opposed to, say, winds, which are much more, I guess they cover a larger part of the country, larger area. They're a bit easier to get a hold of, a bit easier to predict wind speeds. Persistent rain that leads to extreme flooding, that kind of thing can be easier to predict than the sporadic hit and miss nature of thunderstorms. So you can have high impacts from thunderstorms, but it's unlikely to reach that threshold of likelihood of confidence in where they're going to hit. Yeah,
and the impacts just wouldn't be as widespread probably either.
That's true, yeah.
So you'd have to, unless you had an MCS, if you could spot an MCS or you knew there's an MCS coming, then yeah, I guess it's not beyond the realms of possibility, but I think it would be very, very unlikely to have a red warning for thunderstorms, but they are possible. Good question. Get some really good questions in this week.
Lots of questions.
Yeah, loads of really good questions.
A few questions about thunderstorms, about why we haven't seen thunderstorms after recent heat waves and what are the chances over the next few days. Just quickly touch on the thunderstorms that we may or may not have seen over the last few heat waves. I think the last heat wave was quite a quiet end to that, but I think there were a few thunderstorms, and before that we've had a couple of bouts of thundery activity, one that affected the far southeast, so mostly Kent and then parts of Suffolk, Essex and Norfolk, but mostly to the east of the meridian. And then there was this other thunderstorm outbreak that affected mainly parts of northern England and southern Scotland. We talked about that in a deep dive with Dan Holly, one of our experts here. So yeah, there have been thunderstorms, but as is always the case, they've been hit and miss, and many people have avoided them. So heat waves don't always end with a bang. And this one, again, it's not necessarily that we're going to see a thundery breakdown, although I imagine there will be a few thunderstorms. It's mostly showery rain moving in on Monday and into Tuesday, perhaps some more persistent rain in northern parts of the UK. But yeah, these heat waves aren't necessarily ending with a classic bang for everyone.
No two heat waves are ever the same, they don't end the same.
Very true, very true.
Otherwise our job would be a lot easier, wouldn't it? And yeah, much more simple. But it is changing. Question from last week, question from the deep dive actually, is the jet stream bringing the warmth, or is it the position of the high bringing the hot weather, or the orange colours on the map? Let's go and take a look at the map, and we'll talk a little bit about what we're expecting, if I can get up without getting tangled in my microphone. It's a good question. It isn't, as I've already hinted at, it isn't a classic heat building from the south. We are not importing our air from Spain and Portugal. It's kind of homegrown heat. This is the satellite sequence through the week, and this is basically showing where the cirrus is. This is the infrared satellite. It's basically a good indicator of where the jet stream is, because the cirrus, this cloud that you can see, is kind of at the same level as the jet stream. You can see it dipping down here when we were on the cool side of the jet earlier in the week, and now the jet stream is pushing up there. It's kind of like a warm conveyor, actually. The jet stream pushing everything up there, and you can see it taking the weather fronts with it all the way up towards Iceland. We've seen this kind of pattern quite often with a dip, a trough out in the Atlantic, the jet stream moving north, and that allows high pressure to be sitting in over the UK, and that is what is building our heat at the moment. Again, like it has done for the past couple of hot spells, high pressure building, the air is getting squished, and so temperatures are rising, plus you've got the sunny skies overhead, and the sun, of course, is high in the sky at this time of year, so that is adding to the heat. So that is, basically the reason. It's kind of to do with the jet stream, but not the jet stream being over the UK, being further away. So that's why we're seeing this hot spell, but I guess the big question is, why is it so hot through this summer? Well, first of all, let's answer the question, has it really been that hot? Isn't it just summer? We're seeing a lot of comments about it being just summer. Well, I think it's hard to justify saying it's a typical summer when we look at some of the stats, because we already know that June was very warm. Our record's going back over 100 years. The mean temperature for June, the second warmest on record. And for England, it was actually the warmest June on record. So we know that June was very warm, and the warmth has continued into July. The current temperature, where we're at, if we look at the mean temperature so far through all of summer, this was from a couple of days ago, we are in the top 5%. So yeah, pretty unusual. We are in the top 5%. That's the mean when you take the temperature across the whole of the UK during day and during the nighttime. If we just look at nighttime temperatures, then actually we are extreme. We are above the record for this stage of the summer months. Those nighttime temperatures averaged across the whole of the UK are above the highest we've recorded. Again, records going back well over 100 years. So that is extreme. Not to say it'll stay that way. We're less than halfway through the summer, but as it stands at the moment, we are above that record. So yeah, it has been a very, very warm summer so far. By the end of this hot spell, we'll have had 30 Celsius recorded on either 11 or 12 different days. And that, at this stage of summer, has only happened twice before, in 1976 and 2018, both of which were hot summers. So I think by whichever way you measure it, it has been an unusually warm summer so far. It's also been very sunny. But what are the contributing factors to that? Well, obviously, we've got the changing climate. That is always going to be in the background. We know that the world is warming up. We know that the UK is warming up. So that is one part of it. But there are other factors at play also. One is actually how dry the ground is. Now, this graph is quite interesting because a lot of people think that the summer has been very dry, but this is the running total of the rainfall across the UK as it stands at the moment. And you can see, tracking it through the summer, we're actually pretty much bang average. We're bang close to this middle black line, the average. So summer so far hasn't been especially dry across the whole of the UK, but there's always regional variations. And crucially, it's following on from what was a very dry spring. So spring was a very dry season. This was averaged over the whole of the season. You can see much of Wales, most of England, parts of eastern Scotland, less than 50% of the average rainfall. Notice this pocket down here, parts of southeast Wales, parts of central southern England, less than 30%. So spring was a very dry season. I talked about the rainfall so far through summer. Now this is the map for the whole of summer so far. Now this needs explaining. Don't look at that and think, oh, it has been dry, what you're talking about, because this is for the whole, when compared to the whole of summer, and we'd only expect 42% of average. So you'd expect it in this mid-brown colour, but even then you can see quite a chunk of East Wales and England is in the dark brown colour, so that's less than 30%. So that is less than average here, whereas parts of Cumbria have already had have had close to their average summer rainfall, and we're only halfway through. So that's showing that regional variation. One more thing I want to talk about in terms of moisture. This is soil moisture deficit. This is showing how dry the ground is across the UK. And if we zoom in a little bit, we can see that actually in parts of Wales in particular, and the West Midlands down towards that area we saw that had a very dry spring. It's very dry, the soil. The soil moisture deficit is basically the amount of rain, the amount of water you'd have to put back into the soil to get it at field state, at steady state. The ground is like a sponge, if you think of it. Most of the time it's got some water in it, but due to evaporation, then if it doesn't rain, then you're going to lose that soil moisture. And that's showing quite high soil moisture deficit in this zone in particular, and across parts of Yorkshire, where of course a hosepipe ban came into play today. Why is that important? Well, it's one of the contributing factors to the heat. Because the ground is so dry, if there's more moisture in the ground, then it takes some energy from the sun, from the heat, to evaporate that moisture. When the ground is dry, you don't get as much evaporation, so there's more energy left just to heat the air. So that is one of the factors why we're seeing high temperatures, particularly this time around, across that zone, across East Wales and the West Midlands. Another one, talked about it earlier, the sea. The state of the sea around the UK, significantly above average. In fact, a marine heat wave across parts of southern England, South Wales, in and around the Irish Sea. This is last week, but it just goes to demonstrate that the sea surface temperatures are well above average. So that's not going to, so if the air's travelling over the sea, it doesn't necessarily get us cooled down as much as it would have done. So you've got the dry ground, you've got the warm seas surrounding the UK. On top of that, you've got the high pressure, which is squashing the air. Squashing, increasing the pressure, that builds the temperature as well, along with the strong sunshine beating down day on day. They're the four main contributing factors to this current hot spell, and in the background of all of that, of course, you've got our warming climate. So that kind of explains why this summer so far has been so pretty warm, so unusually warm.
Actually, along that theme, T-Man has asked if 40 degrees is possible this year.
That's interesting. There was a paper on that, wasn't there, a couple of weeks ago about how 40 degrees is much more likely now than it was even when we recorded it back in 2022. Back then we thought it was a bit of a freak, it was at the extremes. But as we've seen online quite a lot, people publishing weather maps showing 40 degrees, the computer models are generating that more often, which is not always that we're going to see it, and we haven't done yet so far. Some of them are just too extreme, but it's an indication that it's possible. And I think I'm right in saying there's now a 50% chance that we will again see, they're saying there's 50-50 of the weather we'll see 40 degrees again in the next 12 years, I think. So that's the more recent paper just showing how much more likely it is. Back in 2022, we thought that was pretty much the peak, but actually looking back in it now, a recent analysis suggests that wasn't actually the peak, and it is possible. Not going to see it in this hot spell, but of course, one of the contributing factors I've already talked, if you have a hot build-up, if you have hot spells, earlier in the summer, then you're more likely to have those hotter spells. There's more extremes later on because the ground is drier and parched and brown, and you haven't got that soil. You've got the soil moisture deficit increasing too.
When we saw 40 degrees in 2022, we had this air coming up from the south. And as you explained earlier, we're not seeing that at the moment. We haven't seen it in the last 3 heat waves. The air has been heated across the UK because of high pressure. So that doesn't normally lead to such extreme temperatures. We've seen low to mid 30s rather than the high 30s because we haven't had a setup where we've imported exceptional hot air from Spain or from North Africa yet. So some of those outside model runs that have been showing in the last month or two high 30s, low 40s, they've had a different setup where you've imported that extreme hot air from the south. Of course, as we've approached the dates in question, the models have decided upon a different outcome.
Yeah, that's
what's possible.
Yeah, that's definitely possible if we do get that, because we know Spain and Portugal have been incredibly hot. The Mediterranean is exceptionally hot again this year. Temperatures in some parts of the sea close to 30 degrees Celsius. So if we are importing that air from this hot source, that is an extra factor, and that could push us to that next level, to those extremes of temperature when we potentially would be putting warnings out.
And a couple of people have asked about the change into next week. How unsettled will it be?
Let's take a look at that, shall we? Because what we're seeing, I talked about the dip in the jet stream out in the Atlantic, which is allowing high pressure to build here, but it is all gradually shifting, slowly but surely. It's all gradually getting closer. There's that dip, there's that trough, the low pressure getting closer and closer. Still not with us on Sunday. In fact, this low may be more of an influence across eastern areas as we go into Sunday. Even the potential for that to generate a few showers on Sunday across the extreme east as we see the cloud increasing here. Maybe 1 or 2 showers, but we're kind of getting squeezed during Sunday with a bit more cloud coming in from the east. the possibility of a few showers, but basically I think most places will be dry. But then look at that, some showery rain coming in from the west from that other weather system as the jet stream dips further south and that low pressure starts to age. So we're getting squeezed. There is a change on the way, and by the time we get to Monday, now don't believe where the rainfall is too literally on this. This is just a ballpark with these complicated breakdowns, as we say. It doesn't necessarily mean these zones are going to be that wet, but it does look as if we are going to see showery rain coming in around an area of low pressure. Notice down still across many eastern areas, Monday's dry and sunny and probably still pretty warm. There's an outside chance we could still get to 30 Celsius across parts of the east on Monday, but generally the air is coming in, so it will be turning cooler as we head into the early part of next week. And you can see that change in temperatures. Saturday probably the peak, although today will be the hottest for some zones. Saturday that probably the peak across Scotland and Northern Ireland. And then we start to see those temperatures dipping down. But many areas are going to be reaching those heat wave criteria today, tomorrow and Sunday before we see the cooler conditions coming in for Monday and next week. But as I said, even into next week, with that kind of pressure pattern, the low pressure here, take the jet stream off. The air still coming in from the west or the southwest. There's a bit of ridging across the southeast. It'll still be warm across the southeast. Temperature's still going to be above average, but we are sort of turning more showery. Unfortunately, most of the showery rain is going to be close to this low pressure. If we look at that for, say, Tuesday, looking at showery stuff coming in here, and the driest areas further east may well not see much at all. Quite a lot to play for in the detail of where we see the rain, but certainly western areas will see some rain Monday and more particularly so on Tuesday. So yeah, we are going to see a change into next week, but not just cool. Well, no, it is going to cool down quite a bit, but still parts of the south and east will be pretty warm, I suspect, and humid.
Fancy a quiz?
Yes, I do. I do fancy a quiz. Should we do it?
Let's do it. Right. The theme this week is a sort of assorted mix based on previous hot weather in the UK. There's no proper
definitive theme. Okay.
There's a bit of sport, something about my school days.
Oh, of course.
And some temperature stuff in there as well.
Aidan's school days. Were shorts compulsory for Aidan McGivern? Is that the question?
We'll wait and see.
Oh.
Okay, so question 1. You have to wait question 5 for that one.
Oh, that's a proper tease, that. Right.
Question 1.
Yes.
Out of how many years between 1960 and 1989, so that's a 30-year period, 1960 to 1989, how many of those years was the highest temperature of the year greater than or equal to 35 Celsius? Okay, so how many years in that 30-year period, 60s, 70s and 80s, did the UK record a temperature equal to or greater than 35 Celsius? Is it 1, 3, 10 or 15? 1 year, 3 years, 10 years or 15 years. In those 3 decades, did the UK record a temperature equal to or higher than 35?
Equal, so 35.0 or above.
Correct.
I'm going to go with that. That's what I'm going to go with.
Locked in his answer.
I have. So I'm not Googling it. I'm just replying to Aidan on Teams.
Okay.
And I'm not checking the polls because I know that's highly controversial.
Yeah, well, 3 is a very popular answer, judging by the comments. Malky's gone with 1. Alan Sheldrake's gone with 10. West Country Mudlarks has said 1 and has given the year 1976. Wow, that's an easy one there. Llewellyn Howells 15, he reckons.
Good Welsh pronunciation.
Well, I am Welsh.
Well, I know. I just Nigel. Your Achnagart was good earlier as well.
Nigel Clifford.
I was complimented on random kind of compliments about how I was complimented by Mia on my pronunciation of Darmstadt last week. So, and she's German, which is why
high praise.
It was high praise indeed. Yes, I was very proud.
Guten Tag, Mia. So, according to the poll, 47% of you said 3, 34% said 10, 14% said 1, and 3% said 15. That's a poll of 87. So yeah, interesting results there. We'll see how many of you are right later on. Question number 2, it's a similar question. Out of how many years between 2016 and 2025 was the same temperature? 35.0 exceeded, or reached or exceeded.
So in the most recent decade?
Most recent decade, including this year. How many years was that 35 Celsius reached or exceeded? 1 year, or was it 3 years, or was it 5 years, or was it all 10 of the last 10 years seeing a 35 Celsius or more? So we're going from 2016 to 2025, including this year.
18 was a hot summer. I reckon we did it then. We know we've done it this year. Obviously 2022, we got to 40.
1, 3, 5 or 10?
I don't know what I'm going with.
Okay, he's locked in his answer.
We are locked in.
And quite a few people are saying 5. Quite a few people are saying 5. Malky's gone with 3. Al has gone with 7. Was 7 one of the choices?
One of the options.
No.
Thanks, Al.
Could happen. Maybe I got it wrong. Okay. It wouldn't be the first time. Kim Bozulevel has gone with 3.
The pronunciation's letting you down a little bit there, I'm thinking, but you know, we're reading it off the cuff.
Needs to be Welsh.
It's live.
Needs to be Welsh.
Yeah.
Okay, Supercell, not all 10. We didn't make it in 2024.
I was going to say,
true.
I'm pretty sure we didn't make it last year.
Trevor Arborn has gone with 3. Okay, next question. Who won in the hottest Wimbledon men's final on record? So, in the hottest men's singles final on record, who was the champion?
Are you going to give me the year?
No.
Oh, that's harsh.
That was a bit too easy. This is fun, right? This is the fun question.
Right, yeah.
Was it Pete Sampras? Was it Roger Federer? Was it Bjorn Borg? Or was it Tim Henman? Shouldn't laugh.
Shouldn't laugh. Tiger Tim. So close.
Pete Sampras,
but,
Roger
I'll give you
Federer.
A clue at home. He never won Wimbledon, so it's
Bjorn
not D.
Borg or Tim Henman.
I mean, Bjorn Borg, there's a decent chance Bjorn Borg won it in 76. But I think he might have been 77. Greg's probably tearing his hair. I bet Greg knows the answer to this. Greg is running the show next door, and he is a massive tennis fan, so I bet Greg knows the answer to this one. Which limits me then to Pistol Pete or Roger Federer. What year do I think it was? I can just picture those hots. Right, let's go with that.
Lots of people are saying Bjorn Borg. A few people are saying Roger. Mark Stollery said Tim Henman. I'm not sure if you're joking or not there, Tim. I mean Mark. Yeah, Roger Federer. To be honest, if I was given that question without having looked it up yesterday, I would have said Roger Federer and not any of the others. But
I think people are thinking. I mean, Bjorn Borg's not a bad because I reckon he must have won it in the mid-70s. So he probably. But I don't think he did win it in 76. I think he won it in 77.
We'll see. You might.
But I don't think 70.
You might have talked yourself out of the right answer there.
Yeah, because 77 was the peak of the heat in 77. Was that first weekend? It probably was Bjorn Borg. But I'm locked in. Something else.
Okay, moving on.
That's annoying.
According to the 1991 to 2020 average, so this is the 30-year average, the most recent 30-year average that we use for our climate stats, when does summer warmth peak in the UK? So, in that 30-year period, what is the hottest day on average? Is it the 21st of June? Is it the 19th of July? Is it the 21st of June, 11th of July, 19th of July, or the 5th of August? When does summer warmth, on average, peak in the UK? 21st of June.
I thought you were going to go
11th of July, 19th of July.
I thought you were then going to say
5th of August.
Like the 20-something of July, which I was going to go with. I remember the heat wave of 2003, when we had the highest temperature. That was early August. That was about the 5th or the 6th.
But then that was beaten in 2019 in July, and it was beaten in 2022 in July.
And it was beaten in 2022
on the 19th.
On the 19th.
So,
but maybe that's why you put that in there. to mess with my mind, McGiven.
But those years, 2019 and 2022, obviously wouldn't have made the 30-year average. Oh no, 2019 would have, because the 30-year average up to the 2020. Okay, some interesting answers there. Variety of answers. 5th of August, says Brandon. Gordie B, 19th of July. Mark Stollery, 5th of August.
Oh, this is good, this quiz.
Sam Wilkinson, 20th of December. Does feel like that sometimes, doesn't it? Okay, Stuart Baines, August. Liam Parker, 19th of July. I think, let's see.
Split, is it? Yeah,
we've
what's
got
the poll results?
19th of July is the most popular result.
Is it?
46%, followed closely by 5th of August, 34%. That's where most of people put their votes. If I'm honest, before looking this up yesterday, I would have said the 19th of July, but we'll see whether or not that is the right answer. Okay, and then the final question, one you've been waiting for. When I went to school in Llandaff, Cardiff in the 1990s, at what temperature was I allowed to come to school without wearing a blazer?
Oh, that's interesting.
I didn't check whether this temperature threshold still exists or whether it's changed over the years. That would be interesting.
Did you enforce it? Were you like the temperature monitor? I can imagine you saying,
but I took
knocking on the headmaster's door saying, "Excuse me, sir, I think you'll find it's 22.5 degrees. I'm taking my blazer off."
All right, it wasn't that much of a geek. Was it 20 degrees? Was it 25 degrees? 30 degrees or 35? So what temperature was I allowed to come to school without wearing a blazer?
I don't think we got to 35 when you were
25, 30 or 35.
In class, or was this, how was it monitored? I want to know.
If the temperature was forecast for the next day.
Forecast for the next day, okay.
Temperature was more than this particular temperature.
You didn't have to wear.
We didn't have to turn up at school with our blazers.
Oh, so you were like, it's like a bit like a snow day. You'd be like gathered round watching the BBC weather forecast. Oh, what were you going to say, 25, or is it going to be?
I think we had an email. No, we wouldn't have had an email. I don't know how it was communicated.
Carrier pigeon?
Yeah, I can't remember. I can just remember the temperature threshold and the excitement of exceeding that, so we could just go in our shirt sleeves. Okay, you've locked in your answer.
I have, and now I'm regretting it.
I'm not expecting people to know this. It's just a
bit of fun. It's just a bit of fun on a Friday lunchtime. Who liked our thumbnail, by the way? Who liked our thumbnail for this week's show? We just had a bit
more
of
than
fun with that.
more than half of people have gone with 25 Celsius. It's interesting. 24% have gone with 30 Celsius.
That would be harsh, man. But then, yeah. You have a strict school, strict upbringing.
Supercell says, I was at school in the 90s too, and I'm sure it was around 25 Celsius. Is this a blanket rule for all schools?
Yeah, you'd have thought it'd be different, wouldn't you? And depends whether you're...
I'm starting to question my memory now. Okay. Do you want to have the answers?
Yes, please.
Right. Question 1. How many years between 1960 and 1989 did the temperature in the UK equal or exceed 35 Celsius? You said 1. You are correct. It was 1 year, of course, 1976. So the temperature in the UK didn't exceed or reach 35 Celsius in the 60s at all, or in the 80s, or in the 1970s, except for 1976.
I just saw maybe it's your comment the other day on TikTok. Someone had put that, oh, it's just summer, it's hot. It used to be like this all the time in the 80s. You replied with a really sensible reply saying, I think you'll find that actually we never exceeded 35 degrees in the 80s. And did you see what they replied?
They said something like it was 42 degrees in my garden.
Yeah, it was 42 degrees. No, they just said it did in Sheffield. And that was their reply. It's like... I mean, you just can't argue with people like it. It's just like, ugh, so
check the Sheffield records.
Yeah. Obviously, that person knows what the temperature was in Sheffield every day. Right, one from one.
Okay, congratulations if you got that right. Out of how many years in the last 10, including this year, was the same temperature reached or exceeded? Was it 1, 3, 5, or 10? And the answer is what you went with. 5. It's what a lot of people went with. So congratulations if you got that right.
Just to reiterate, so in the past 10 years, we have beaten that temperature 5 times, and we only beat it once in the whole 30-year period from the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Correct. I can give you the years that it's been exceeded in the last 10.
Ooh, can I guess?
Okay, go on. See if you can get the
this year, 2022, 2020, 2018. I think we did in 23 as well. and 17.
Not quite. You're forgetting 2019, which was the record breaker.
Yeah.
And you also missed out 2020. So it wasn't 2023, it wasn't 2017. So the years are 2018, 2019, 2020, 2022, 2025. Those are the 5 years. Right, and this is the one that you talked yourself out of the correct answer, I'm afraid.
No.
Who won in the hottest Wimbledon men's final on record? It was 1976, 34.1 Celsius. And that was Bjorn Borg, who won in 1976.
Did he win in 77 as well?
I didn't check that, possibly.
Oh, I'm gonna say, maybe I'll do it after this live rather than. But I was sure he won in 77.
He won it a few times, didn't he?
Anyway.
From 76 through to 1980.
He won every year from 76 to 1980.
Oh, did he? Oh, that's good news. That's Greg, by the way.
Thanks,
Told
Greg.
you Greg would know.
Our tennis fan.
Our tennis fan.
Voice of wisdom.
Voice from above.
Question 4. According to, I didn't check the poll for that one. I didn't see whether that was the most popular answer. Let me just scroll back. Federer. I would have gone with Federer because I'd have thought it would have been more recent. But
see, I remember. I was thinking it was 2003. I remember a final that was on the 4th of July. I think it was Sampras against Curry. I think it was like the All-America final on the 4th of July. And I remember that being looking really hot. That was what I thought.
2003.
That was my,
that was hot summer.
Yeah, exactly. That was my thinking. But I talked myself out of that.
Congratulations to the 26% of people who got that right.
Yeah, well done.
And the most popular result from the poll for question 4, I'm afraid, was incorrect as well. So this was, according to the 30-year average, when does summer warmth peak in the UK? You said 5th of August?
Yes, I did.
You're correct. You are correct. But commiserations to those who said the 19th of July, because it's very close as a fraction of a degree difference between those 2 days. In fact, it kind of plateaus. According to the 30-year average, when you look at the kind of, there's a little curve where the summer temperatures peak between 19th, 20th of July and the 5th of August. And all those days there are within a fraction of a degree. And there's a kind of that period of 2 weeks in which the temperatures are elevated compared with the rest of summer on average. And the last day of that is the 5th of August, and that's the highest. And then it dips off.
Yeah. I guess it gets skewed. I mean, I think, that 2003 probably skews that in the same way that the 2022 skews the 19th, because the 19th in 2022 was just exceptional, wasn't it? And that Eastern, there was
it
so
won't
many places
skew it on that average
records.
period, but it will in the next averaging period.
Yes, yeah.
And finally, when I went to school in Llandaff, Cardiff in the 1990s, at what temperature was I allowed to come to school without wearing a blazer? Most people guessed 25 Celsius. That was most
Was it
popular.
30?
It's 20.
20?
Yes.
What? Lightweights?
Yeah.
What?
That was a heat wave in Cardiff in the 90s. You know, we had a series of disappointing summers. So apart from 95,
That's disappointing. I was disappointed if you wouldn't wear a blazer in.
You know, with the humidity that we were
degrees.
talking about earlier, can get quite oppressive in those schools. We didn't have aircon.
They still don't have aircon now, do they?
But our lessons were in porta cabins.
Let us know in the comments if you had any lessons in porta cabins.
So, I'm sorry for everyone who got that wrong, because most people did.
Wow, yeah. What percentage went for that?
56% went for 25.
Oh, wow.
And the 20 option was 12%. Well done.
Good stuff.
Bit of a curveball, that question. And that's just going by my memory. I could be wrong.
You always love a curveball. People are calling for Greg to come on screen. I think we'll keep the mystique. I like the voice. Right? This is the voice, the mystery voice. We had George on the other week showing his legs through the bottom of the screen. Big shout out to George, who's running the polls as always. So thank you for that, George. So we've seen George. I think the mystique of Greg needs to grow. We just have his voice.
He's tall, dark-haired, incredibly handsome. Just picture that.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Isaac Shaw, why do some heat waves end in thunderstorms and some don't? Good question. And Paul James asking how common is ball lightning? We had a quiz on lightning the other week, didn't we? The last time.
Mentioned ball lightning last time.
Ball. So that was probably 4 weeks ago, the last time we were on in these roles. So you can go back and check that out, Paul James. Why do some heat waves end in thunderstorms and some don't? I mean, most of them do in some way or another, or certainly a heavy downpour. But yeah, it depends what thunderstorms always hit and miss, so not everywhere gets them, but some end in massive ones. It depends where that heat source from, where our air is coming from. That heat needs to combine with moisture, and it's not that
and colder air above as well. That helps. So you could have very warm air at the surface, but if you've got very warm air above as well, you haven't got that temperature difference that causes the air to rise and causes thunderstorms to develop. So it's about looking up through the atmosphere as well as what's going on at the surface.
Suit plays GD says, where is Alex Burkill? Well, he was in London this week, wasn't he? He was at Civil Service Live. He is working today. He's probably watching. Hello, Mr. B. I think he's back next week on here.
With me?
With you? Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, because I'm off. What's the confidence looking like for next week, Gordy? Well, I talked about that earlier. Confidence in detail is low for where it's going to rain and exactly when it's going to rain, exactly how the temperature will dip off, but high confidence that we are going to see a change to more mixed weather, more changeable weather. It won't be as hot, but as I mentioned, still some warmth across the southeast.
What's interesting looking back at the past, the summer so far, is that we've had this repeating cycle of changeable westerlies and showery stuff, particularly towards the northwest, followed by a gradual build in pressure from the south, and this kind of cycle's gone on every 10 to 12 days or so. But when every heat wave has come to an end, we haven't necessarily seen the next heat wave on the horizon. We've just seen the changeable spell, then the changeable spell starts and you start getting indications of the next heat wave. Whether that cycle continues or not, we'll have to see. One thing that you do get an increased amount of from this point in summer onwards is rain on average. August is the wettest month of the summer, so as you go through summer you get an increased chance of rain, and with the warm seas as well, could play a factor. So a few things to keep an eye on.
Some places really do need a bit of rain as well, so that is not necessarily bad news. Thank you for all your comments, thank you for all your queries, thank you for taking part in the quiz. If you want something else to watch, then we made a little video about space weather. Didn't feature Noctilucent clouds, but we've got a little video explaining auroras and why we have a space weather department in the Met Office. So we posted that last weekend. It's already been watched by quite a few, but we can see a little snippet of it now, I think. When the plasma from a CME hits our magnetosphere, well, that's when the magic happens. High energy particles from the sun collide with low energy particles meandering around high in our magnetosphere. These particles then become energized or excited from the collision, and to calm down again, well, they have to lose that energy. And they do that by emitting light. That's what you're seeing. That's the interaction behind the Northern Lights. When billions of charged particles reach Earth from a CME, they can create dazzling displays of light in the atmosphere.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was quite cool. Mark Machin made those animations, so that's quite a good thing. So yeah, you can go and watch that on YouTube. Obviously, Aurora, it's quite active at the moment, the sun, but you don't get to see it this time of year very much because the nights just aren't long enough. It's just not dark enough. There's a chance over far north of Scotland, but better chance, increasing chance as we get longer nights later in the summer and into the early part of autumn.
Yeah, and I guess that's it from us this week.
Spotify. I mentioned Spotify at the start. Do give us a follow on there. You can watch all of our longer form videos on there. There's a daily weather video we put on there, and then all of our longer ones. So like the week ahead, the 10-day trend, the deep dive, and this live as well also goes on there. So if you're on Spotify, give us a follow on there. Numbers are growing week on week. And just a reminder, we've talked a lot about sunny weather. There's lots of advice about how to handle the weather this weekend. I know many people just enjoy fine sunny weather, but this is, pushing it a little bit. 30 degrees can have health impacts. So just make sure you're prepared for this hot spell of weather over the course of the weekend. There will be a lot of sunshine around. So if you are out in the sun, particularly those peak times, follow the advice there by searching for weather ready. Basically, wearing a hat, avoid those peak times, seek shade, and do make sure you've got sunscreen on because the sun is strong. So yeah, lots of really good advice if you search for weather ready on our website.
I got told off this morning for opening the blinds in our hall at home, and my wife said, "This is your own advice. Got to keep the blinds closed during the day and the windows closed to keep the house cool." Totally forgot.
Good advice. Good advice from Mrs. McGee. She's full of good advice.
Certainly is.
Yes. One final question. Jane Lovering, hang on. Tall, dark, handsome. Are you afraid of the competition? Maybe we are. Maybe we're keeping Greg from you because we are afraid of the competition. But thank you for that comment. Thank you for all your comments. Big thank you to Greg and to George and to Rich as well, who've been helping out with today's live. Thank you all for watching. Do hit the like button if you could do that just before we go. That would be great. Spread the word, spread the love. Let everyone know that we do this and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, thank you and have a great weekend.
Goodbye.